Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today. And today we're going to be talking about long-distance relationships. And I was just saying to Barry that I haven't had much experience in this, except for looking back on when I went off to college. I left a boyfriend at home and I went off to college. And the relationship sort of quickly fizzled after that. But it went on for a little while. So we're going to talk about long distance relationships. And Barry just informed me that this is a subject that he has been contemplating lately. Not that it's gone anywhere. But I want to hear Barry's experience and what was coming up for him. So Barry, you're on the hot seat.
Apparently, yes. Actually, before I get to that one, because when you talked about college, reminded me of my own experience. Is when I went away to college, I met someone who lived in the local town, and we didn't start dating until after I finished college that year. And so it became like a summer thing, because it was after my first year in college. And in that particular college, I never went back, but I basically ended up commuting from my home back to where she lived. I mean, literally, because I was in college that year, so I was local to her. But when I went home, I wasn't local anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it's got to be a week, 2 weeks after we finished college on a summer break. I knew I had to see her, and I didn't have her phone number. All I knew was where she worked in town, where she lived.
Mm-hmm.
So it took a 2-hour bus ride on the off chance she was at work, so I could talk to her because I had no way of reaching her. But I was so enamored by her and so like wanting something. And so I went up there and met her. And so we had quite a fun, like back and forth adventure, 2-hour bus rides each way because neither of us had a car at the time. And it definitely wore on us as time went by. It was probably my first, it was my first quote real relationship. I was like 18, 19 maybe at the time. And that experience was it's funny, I didn't think about it until you mentioned the college thing, was so interesting about how distance became such a vital part of the relationship. Like it would make or break it.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up breaking it.
Yeah.
Everything else was going great, but we couldn't sustain that momentum. So that's one piece of the puzzle about long distance relationship. But to bring it up to date with what I shared to you privately before the talk, kidding sort of thing.
You know me.
I know nothing's going to be hidden away. Is that because I have a very clear definition of what I want in partnership and in relationship, it's not somebody I'm likely to meet in the local coffee shop or, locally to me. And I've made peace with that. So what has happened is women I've connected with, usually through social media or through some summit connection group thing where we have where it's just common ground, so to speak, but virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes the women I meet I'm attracted to, not because of this, at least I don't think so, haven't been local.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, a couple of them are in Europe. A couple of them are on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. So they're not local at all. In fact, and it's funny because a friend of mine who I haven't seen for a while bumped into me a couple of weeks ago and she said, "There's someone I want you to meet." Well, the friend she wants to meet is in San Diego, which is still not close. It's not far away. It's still a 2-hour drive.
Better.
Yeah,
2 hours instead of across the country and across.
yeah. And so I've been sitting with what if, like, if that's a choice and if that happens, what do I do with that? And part of it is, frankly, clearly, because I know what I want in a relationship, that it won't work to be just long distance. It would have to be one of us relocates or we both relocate somewhere else. And I felt myself maybe feeling more open to that possibility for myself than I've ever done before. So the idea of long distance relationship, I'm not speaking to the point of having that commute thing in my current life journey, but just contemplating the perception of would I move somewhere if it was worth it for that relationship for long distance to make it less long distance, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing up some really important points. I just want to address some of these so that
Please.
people,
Yeah.
because you bring up two things. There's some people enter into a long distance relationship with the sort of expectation or this is just temporary until we decide if we can relocate or if we're going to be together. There's that
Yeah.
aspect. There's some people that are okay with having a long distance relationship. They don't, they're either they really enjoy a lot of alone time, or they're very busy. They're not, physical connection, affection, sex, all those things are not high priority to them, or if they
Hmm.
are, that's factored in, and it's like we are in this intimate relationship, but because we are so far apart and only see each other once a year, then there are going to be other people in my life, which I have
Yeah.
encountered. I think I had one very quick, long distance relationship with somebody I'd actually known a long time in the UK, and we connected when I was home, and we were going to, he was going to come visit me here, and I'd known him a long time anyway. So there was a foundation for our relationship. But he made it very clear that because we weren't going to be able to see each other probably, every month, it would be sort of 4 months, 6 months, whatever, that he was going to have other relationships, other physical
Hmm.
relationships. And that didn't work for me. So I had to say, well, I really appreciate your honesty, but that's just not going to work for me. And so you do have to really, really be clear about, like you said, you're very clear on what you want out of a relationship. So
Hmm.
it's very easy for you to make those decisions. Whereas I think some people, especially because we meet so much online, there is that tendency to sort of, um, create this fantasy picture of, oh my God, we've met online, but we are going to end up living together, whether it's here in America, or in Europe, or whatever it is, that there will actually be a time when you're going to come together and live together. So these are really important things to get very clear
Oh
before
yeah.
entering into a relationship. So back to you, Barry.
Well,
So,
again, you say things that brings up another story. So, um, this is in my early 20s actually. That when I first came to the States, because I came out when I was early 20s, in 81,
mhm,
and there was a girl I happened to like a lot back in England who I worked with. She was in the same company I did, and we flirted but never had anything going on. But when we moved to the States, because I was coming to LA and she wanted to be an actress, her eyes lit up. And I kind of knew, but I didn't own it, the fact that she really wants to use me to get to the States so she could get into Hollywood. However, I thought, well, if she comes over here, I might get to be, I had always like mindset like we could be in a relationship sort of thing. And
mhm,
so I invited her to come out and stay with me. And the fantasy, unfortunately, was so much more than the reality experience. Because ultimately, the funny thing was, and I think I'm sure I said this story before, um, that we had our own schedules and our own lifestyles. And one night, about 6 months in, 5 months in, something like that, she came back from doing her thing like in the middle of the night, and she'd been out with her friends drinking and everything else. Came back at home, and for the first time, she decided to get in bed with me and basically want to have sex. And I was as fast asleep when she woke me up with this experience. And as much as that was a fantasy come true, it was so like deflating for me
mhm,
energetically. It's like that wasn't what I wanted. And I didn't know until it happened that it wasn't what I wanted. It's like I had this thing in my head about it would be great to have and great to have. And then when I got what I thought I wanted, I
mhm.
was totally bummed out by it.
Yeah.
And,
You're
and
bringing up, sorry, sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, first of all, by the way, that was my first real intercourse experience. So that was
Mhm,
also not very functional either. And I've had to process through that one. But secondly, was there was no room after that to be together. Like I basically asked them to move out right after that because I just felt so So I mean, as much as from a man's point of view, I felt violated.
mhm.
So that fantasy didn't come true the way I planned it.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to pick up on was the fantasy,
Hmm.
because and knowing yourself really, really well,
Which I
because
didn't do back then, to be honest.
of what 21 years. Um, but well, I shouldn't say that. Uh, I think it takes a long time to really, really get to know yourself. I
Yeah.
personally, but some people are wiser at a younger age than others, so I'm not going to take that away from anybody. But the other thing I was going to say is some people are attracted to the unavailable. They just are. And I'm sticking my hand up here, that's me.
Yep. Hmm.
So, And I was also unavailable emotionally. So I liked distance in my relationship. And I still do to a degree. I mean, that's why Hudi and I live apart. I mean, I love him dearly and we'll spend the rest of our lives together. But I do like my alone time. I like some distance in my relationship. But some people are not aware of that fact. And they deliberately fall for people that are unavailable either emotionally or geographically or whatever, so that they can fill in the space with fantasy.
Yeah.
And it's that is so important to know about yourself. And people do it when they fall in love with, somebody that's not available either, as I say, geographically, emotionally, or even that they're in another relationship. They're like, it's not my fault that I keep falling in love with married men. Or just ask yourself why you're even allowing yourself to entertain the idea or to go there. Is there something that's pulling you, that's attracting you to that distance, that unavailability? So I think that's a real key thing too in a long distance relationship. Now, I also wanted to go back to something about the knowing yourself, to know what it is you want,
Mhm.
and being able to communicate that really, really clearly with your partner.
Yeah.
Because again, some people just see it as they're not thinking of a future. They're just thinking, "Hey, this feels good for right now, and this is great, and I see you whenever I see you." But other people might be investing in it, thinking that there is an outcome. That at the end of this period of time, there is going to be a physical coming together, and those things have to be talked about. How
Absolutely.
much physical distance you have in your relationship, is vital, to not assume or get resentful about a situation when you knew going into it exactly what was on offer.
Yeah. For me, looking at some of the current possibilities I'm entertaining, just scanning my head, none of them have actually had the conversation about that possibility with the other with her with any one of these women. So there's nothing I can do at this point to change that. It's purely let's have a conversation and just start building that connection, see where it goes. And for me, this situation, to be blunt, in my work, is really looking for more partnership in business as well as in romance. So it's not looking just for a relationship partner. Someone's looking for a strategic alliance or a partnership in business that happens to also be romantic. And
Mhm.
so it's the sequence or the order in which I'm looking. I'm looking at, okay, what she and I talk about really overlaps business wise. Let's have a conversation about seeing if that works. And yes, I think she's cute as well.
Mhm.
So I'm watching myself like not lean into that territory at this point. And again, long distance is part of the challenge because one of them for difference is time zones. 7 hour time difference, 8 hour time difference means that our conversations are not frequent and easy. They have to be scheduled.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great point you just brought up there, Barry. I was about to talk about this too. Is if you are going to entertain a long distance relationship, it actually does require a bit more structure than
Yes.
than a relationship that geographically you're in the same time zone or very close to each other, because you do, especially with time differences, you do have to schedule when you can meet. And it's also, I think, important, especially if it is a romantic connection, to not just have it be like say my sisters. I mean, all my family live in the UK or Spain, and I have to schedule, they're in the evening, I'm in the morning, I'm starting my
Right.
work day, they at the end of their day, they want to just chat, and I'm like, I gotta get to work. But there's more. It's a touching base, and it's a loose, and it's lovely. It's like, we'll talk when we can talk. But if
Hmm.
it's a romantic relationship, there does have to be more structure. There cannot be a taking for granted of each other and be like, well, I'll call you when I got time.
Right.
Or you really do have to schedule it into your day, uh,
Absolutely.
and make the other person feel that it's a date. Even it's not just a quick chat. It's like that you can have the quick chats, but also set time aside to really sort of have a date. And
Hmm.
technology is amazing these days. We have Zooms, we have, you know, lots of different platforms, FaceTime, whatever, that you can look at each other and have a deeper connection from looking in each other's eyes as opposed to just a quick phone call.
Right.
So, even though this might appear to be more freedom in a long distance relationship, it can also, as I say, if you're taking it seriously, can come with a few more constraints that you might not have anticipated.
Absolutely. And the thing that for me that is challenging is that, being able to like send a voice, because I do a lot of times now send voice texts versus text messages, which is the same, mechanical thing, but it's a different way of sending it. But the truth is, when I send messages knowing that the person on the other end won't receive it until their morning, which means I'll be asleep when they respond, is an adjustment. It's something you got to get used to. And yes, if you're dating someone who's in the same longitude as you, latitude, whichever way it is,
Both,
north, south,
actually.
say again?
I said both. You could be on the same longitude and you could be north and they could be in the south.
Well, what I'm saying is, about being on the same longitude, the same time zone, that can be a lot easier, even though you could be thousands of miles apart too. But when we're speaking going around the globe in distance, long distance, whether it's even from East Coast to West Coast, which is 3 hours, or from Europe, or even more challenging, is from like the West Coast to New Zealand or Australia, because that's almost 12 hours difference.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, or almost, it's like the other side of the time zone. So having the time zone conversation is going to be part of this opportunity in long distance relationship too, because the quality time, if you're someone like me, as quality time is part of your love languages, it's important to know that you can schedule with your partner a time that works for both of you so you can relax and enjoy each other's presence, even if it's just over video, like you said. And so technology is wonderful, and we're not yet to the point of immersive 3D world where we can actually be with each other in another virtual reality type thing, which may come down the road in the next few years, but who knows. So making the time to travel to be with each other has to become a priority, because a quality long distance relationship needs physical presence. It needs to be in person. So if you're not yet ready to move in together, like moving cross country or move across continents to be together, then it's definitely worth having a conversation about how much time you're choosing to spend together. I know one of my clients had that, where she and her then boyfriend, like, I think it was about a 2 hour drive apart, so they'd spend a couple of days together, because it was, rather than just spending an afternoon. You can't spend an afternoon when you're going to spend 4 hours commuting. It doesn't work. So you have to plan your time accordingly. And even though, and this is what happened when they started dating, he would stay in a hotel and not stay at her place. That way there was a cleaner boundary. So it was like he could be local to her for the next day or two, but they still maintained a healthy boundary. So one thing about long distance relationships is, don't make the assumption because you're going to go visit where the other person lives, you're going to be with them immediately. Because that's a bad assumption, first of all, as well. So having something set up where, if you're going to go visit your prospective partner and you want to spend time where they are, rent an Airbnb, get a hotel room, something where, or even a friend in the neighborhood, stay with them, so you can keep a clean boundary energetically, so you can meet up with each other for drinks or socially whilst you're in town, rather than presume, because you don't have anybody to be in town except with that person, you think you're going to stay at their place, and then 1, 2, 3, you're in bed together.
Yeah.
So you can have that clean boundary.
And what you just brought up another point
Of
about
course.
long distance, and that is the expense. That's got to
Hmm.
be factored in.
Yep.
It really is, especially if you're on another continent. I mean, flying, time and expense are a massive, massive part of this. So before you sort of just go headlong into something with all the romantic illusions of, you know, distance makes the heart grow fonder, and,
Yep.
all that stuff that, work for me. But no, I'm teasing. But it really is. You've got to factor that in, and the strain that that will put on the relationship, and who pays for that. I mean, is
Yes.
one person the one that's always doing the traveling, always covering the expense? Um, these are things that have to be talked about and not taken for granted, and worked out together. The other thing I really did want to point out, because I'm thinking you've got to have a sort of a certain personality to be able to handle long distance, and that is,
Hmm.
if you're a jealous person, not going to work.
All right.
You do
Yes, indeed.
torture yourself and torture them, which they don't deserve. If they're not doing anything wrong, if they're doing something wrong, maybe a little torture is okay. I'm teasing, but you have got to be very, very secure, and also really trust your instincts,
Yeah.
because people can lie and manipulate when they're not in the same geographical location as you. They can do it even if they are, but it's easier to get away with things if you're on another time zone or something like that. My other suggestion is you might meet somebody online and start to have feelings and they're expressing feelings for you and everything. But my suggestion would be meet them where they live before you get too involved.
Hmm.
Go to wherever they live, meet their family, meet their friends, because these long distance relationships online can be such a hotbed for deception, for scams. People completely and utter believe that they're in this committed long-term relationship, and I had a friend once who met this person, and my spidey instincts were already lying, as he wants to come to see you, but you can't go and see him. He lived in France, and it was all about coming out here, visiting her here and his life. And she was in Europe visiting him once, and she was like, "Well, I'm already going to be there. Can I come and see you?" And it was all these excuses of why it wasn't going to work out. Now, this is
Hmm.
something he had actively pursued for months, when it was like, "I'm going to come to California to visit you." But he couldn't make 10 minutes for her when she was in Europe.
Right.
Yet as soon as she came back again, he started it up again. "I want to come and visit you." And I was like, red flags all over it. He's probably
Absolutely.
married. He's he did everything he could to not be available for you to meet him in his hometown where he lived. Um, and she was trying everything to be accommodating. And I was like, he doesn't want you near his home or his life over there. So that, I think, is very important. As much as you can, get to know them, like I say, in their hometown, their base. Know what you're dealing with. Don't invest months and years in a fantasy that really might be nothing more than a fantasy.
Yeah. In fact, I want to underscore that just a second because you are going to, if you're doing a long distance relationship, you don't have the ease of being able to get someone to know somebody pretty quickly because they're local. You just, you check out things every couple of days or a couple of weeks. You get together and do stuff, and you meet their friends, you meet their, business associates, what those sort of things. So things because you're meeting long distance, you'll be seeing each other less frequently than you would if you meet somebody locally. Making the most of that time, like you said, to meet their family, meet people they know, their social circles, things they do socially, because that gives you a bit of picture of the person who they are in real life versus what you met through virtually. So not just in the scamming idea, but just real life
Mhm.
is having a better picture of this person who maybe on social media all they put up is the good stuff. And meanwhile, they're dealing with an ailing family member that you didn't know about, which could change your whole perspective of them in a good way. So there's always things you don't know about somebody that they may not post in the virtual world that you'll discover in real life. So when you do get to visit them, and yes, the expense is a big part of that, as you said, the earlier trips it gets to know them the better because you don't want to spend lots of time traveling and spending money and all these different things to get to know them and take you 7 or 8 visits to discover that's not the person you want to be with.
Mhm.
The sooner you can discover that, the better, because if you are going to be with them, then you're investing. It's worth doing. But if you're not, don't waste the money. That's not going to help you.
Yeah.
So you have a clear, get to know what you need to know up front, or as early as you can.
And again, something that you just said just reminded me of somebody that I know, that she was embarrassed about engaging in a long distance relationship. So she kept it like a secret from her family and friends.
Interesting.
It's exactly. So it was almost like so neither one of them were living in a reality.
Hmm.
One of them were getting the full spectrum of who this human being was. Um, and in the end, they did in fact end up meeting, and they did in fact end up being together. Um, but she was saying that once her family met him, that it changed the whole dynamic of the relationship. Her view of him, her experience of him changed once it went out beyond just the two of them together. That
Hmm.
seeing him, how he interacted with her friends and family, added another layer. That when you are keeping a secret, having a secret affair, in a sense, it's not a real relationship. We can't compartmentalize that well, that we can't, just have a relationship that doesn't involve you. People do it all the time, but whether it's enduring or healthy or satisfying for both people.
Absolutely.
There is an extended community that goes along with you.
Yeah. It's such a key. So I guess to sort of bring some of the points home, and it's again towards the end of the episode, the long distance relationships are okay. It just requires maybe an additional set of skills and awarenesses to keep track of, because, like you were saying before, with the red flags, it can be easier sometimes to spot the red flags when they're local, because you notice them more of overtly because you're hanging out with them, or you're seeing them in the local environment. Because long distance is so, like looking through a long range lens, you can only see them when you're actually there. You may not know much about them as quickly. So be more conscious of what you're walking into, and notice the things that aren't so pretty and happy, because the challenge is we oftentimes um, edify or pedestalize some of those times there's people who are long distance relationship, because they're long distance. It's almost like distance makes the heart grow fonder. It's like the further away they are, the easier it is to fall in love. It's like, don't do that.
Exactly, because you've got a vacuum to fill with fantasy
Exactly.
when they're not there. And again, as you said, we're not saying don't get involved in a long-term relationship at all. Just be very clear as you start to develop feelings for somebody, that you're having these conversations of, what does this mean? Will it always be a long distance relationship, which could be fine for some people,
Right.
or is this just temporary until we really get to know each other and talk about maybe relocating or being more physically present? Um, and again, you said it earlier. What are you looking for in a relationship? Are you looking for more of a partnership? And is physical intimacy not so high on the priority list for you anymore? Because again, sometimes people, it's very important to them, and other people it's not so important. Just
Right.
variations in your emotional, physical makeup. But to have these honest conversations so that you're not being misled and you're not misleading another person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So any other fine little things here? Are you going to give us a follow-up on how your potential distance relationship may evolve or not?
Maybe, no promises.
I'll
If
get it.
there's a lesson in there, I'll share the lessons later on. But otherwise, if it goes some other way, I'll let you know if it does.
Okay, great. All right, lovely. Well, good luck with it either way.
Thank you.
And yeah, for anybody else that's listening, if you have any questions, just direct messages, and we're here for you. So thank
Absolutely.
you for another great conversation, Barry, and we will see
You
each other
tell us.
next week.
That was a fun conversation again.
All right, lovely. Have a great week.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye. We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.